excited?
Yeah.
Okay, so today we're going to do a before reading strategy, a during reading strategy, and an after reading strategy. And our topic today is going to be the Underground Railroad. So, for our first before reading strategy, we'll use the strategy list group label. So, I want you to list all of the things that you know about the Underground Railroad. We will group them together and then give those groups labels. So, I'll start. One thing that I know about the Underground Railroad is abolitionists. What's one thing you know?
It was a passageway.
Alright, passageway. Alright, anything else?
It was to take people to the north.
Going north. I know it was for freedom, right? They went to the north for freedom.
Yeah.
What else?
It doesn't, like, it's not used anymore. It was, like, used in older times.
Right? It was a long time ago. I know that it was used for slaves to escape. So really they became like former slaves
Right.
because they were free then. Anything else?
It was a secret.
Yeah, it had to be kept secret. I know that it went all the way up to Canada.
Ooh.
That was the end point. There were no slaves up there. Do you know anything else about it?
That might be all I got.
All right. That was a lot. We know a lot about it, don't we? So let's group these words together. Which do you think go together?
Going north in Canada.
All right. I'll just check them off once we group them.
Passageway and freedom. Maybe slaves and
Abolitionists and slaves.
It's a big word.
It is.
I think we just have left secret and a long time ago.
Do you think those go together or do they go somewhere in here?
I think secret could maybe. I feel like secret maybe goes better in that one.
Alright.
I feel like a long time ago is almost its own thing. I don't know.
Well, I think it could be its own thing. Or, what is the North and Canada?
It's like a place.
Right, or it could be a setting. And we know settings of stories are time and place. So I think it could go in there.
Okay, I like that.
Now this is history. This is real. This really happened. But I think we can still apply the same rules.
Let's do it.
All right. So now for each group we have, let's give a label. What does each group represent?
Setting.
All right.
This is kind of like the subject, or like the people that are affected.
Yeah, the people involved. How about the last one?
This is kind of like the purpose, or like the how.
Yeah, it's how they got to freedom. All right, great job. So, I like to use this strategy when I think I have a lot of ideas about a subject, but I want to break it down into smaller bits. So we had a lot of ideas about the Underground Railroad, and now we know when we read further, we can look for more settings, we can look for more purposes and how the Underground Railroad was used, and we can look for more people involved, if there were any. When do you think you would want to use this strategy?
I think when learning about something, or maybe like before you read something, that way you could think of all the things you know, put them down, and then as you're learning or reading, you can like kind of add more stuff to it.
Yeah, we can add more, and at the end, we can keep this list and check to see if we learned anything new, or if something we thought we knew was wrong. All right, great learning. Now we're going to do a during reading strategy. Our during reading strategy is called read, pause, and retell. So in this strategy, we read a chunk of information, we think about what was read, and then we retell it. If we feel that we have enough information, then we can keep reading. If not, then we need to reread again to get all of the information. This is a good strategy for when you have a big chunk of text and a lot of information, so that way you can process it and really understand what the text is saying. So I'll model it for you, and then you can do it on your own. This is about Riders Inn in Painesville. It was a part of the Underground Railroad. In its earliest days, it served as a restaurant and inn along the busy Oregon Trail, and secretly was a stop along the way to freedom for thousands of slaves. A light in the uppermost southern part of the building was assigned to slaves that they could find refuge in the basement of Riders Inn. They entered through a wishing well and would hide in the basement, waiting for the cue that all was clear to pass through the tunnels and get to awaiting ships along the Lake Erie coast to take them to Canada. Okay, so I just read that little bit of information. And what I remember is that the slaves would go through tunnels to get to Canada. Do you think that was all that was said?
No, I think there was more.
I think there was more too. So let me reread it again. In its earliest days, it served as a restaurant and inn along the busy Oregon Trail, and secretly was a stop along the way to freedom for thousands of slaves. So right there I know that it helped thousands of slaves get to freedom. And it was a stop on the Oregon Trail, which I know we learned about a little bit earlier in the year. So that's kind of cool that it's making a connection, this one place is making a connection to two things we've learned about. A light in the uppermost southern part of the building was assigned to slaves that they could take refuge in the basement, of Riders Inn. So I know that at Riders Inn there was a signal to slaves that they could come in. I'm wondering if most places on the Underground Railroad had a signal just like that. That's something that I want to find out later. They entered through a wishing well and would hide in the basement, waiting for the cue that all was clear to pass through the tunnels and get to awaiting ships along the Lake Erie coast to take them to Canada. So I know in this specific instance, there were tunnels to take them to Lake Erie. Now, I know this because I've seen it, and maybe you haven't, but Riders Inn is pretty close to Lake Erie. So I know that the tunnels weren't large. And I know from reading before that the Underground Railroad wasn't always underground, but in this instance, it was underground, the tunnels. So, after reading that again, I think that Riders Inn was a very important stop on the Underground Railroad. Slaves would go from Riders Inn to Canada, and they helped thousands of people escape. Do you think that that was a lot of information that I remember?
Yeah.
I think so too. So now, do you feel comfortable doing this on your own?
Yeah.
Alright. I have a clip. This is also about Riders Inn. I want you to read it and then use the strategy to see if you can retell the information that you read.
Okay. So should I stop after, a couple of sentences and recap, or should I read the whole thing first?
I think you should read the whole thing and see what you can remember. And then on your second reading, go back and stop to help you remember.
Okay. Located in Painesville, Ohio, Riders Inn was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Joseph Ryder opened Riders Inn in 1812. Over the years, the tavern expanded, providing fine accommodations and food for travelers in northeastern Ohio. During the early 1800s, Riders Inn served as a stop for stagecoaches traveling between Buffalo, New York, and Cleveland, Ohio. During the 1840s and 1850s, the tavern's owners also provided runaway slaves who were traveling along the Underground Railroad with a safe haven. Ohio was the home of many safe houses for African Americans, as runaway slaves could not truly gain their freedom unless they left the United States of America entirely. Many runaways fled to Canada seeking freedom. The Ryder family operated the inn until 1902. George Randall eventually purchased the inn, expanding it and opening a speakeasy during Prohibition. The Lutz brothers acquired the inn in 1940, and they operated it until 1979. Riders Inn continues to welcome guests today.
Nice reading. So tell me what you remember from that passage.
I remember that Cleveland, Ohio was a safe haven for a lot of African Americans. I remember that slaves had to get to Canada to get full freedom. And I remember they talked about just kind of like the history of Riders Inn as they progressed and changed ownership.
That was a lot of information that you remember. Do you feel comfortable? Like that was enough? Or do you want to go back and read?
No, I think I could get a little more if I went back and did it again.
Alright, let's see what else you can remember.
Okay. So located in Painesville, Ohio, Riders Inn was a stop on the Underground Railroad. Joseph Ryder opened Riders Inn in 1812. Over the years, the tavern expanded, providing fine accommodations and food for travelers in northeastern Ohio. So from that, I know it opened in 1812, and what it did over the years, it expanded and provided accommodations for food and travelers. During the early 1800s, Riders Inn served as a stop for stagecoaches traveling between Buffalo, New York, and Cleveland, Ohio. During the 1840s and 1850s, the tavern's owners also provided runaway slaves who were traveling along the Underground Railroad with a safe haven. So I know from that it served as a stop for stagecoaches from people from New York, Buffalo, and also served as a safe haven for the slaves that came. Ohio was the home of many safe houses for African Americans. as runaway slaves could not truly gain their freedom unless they left the United States of America entirely. Many runaways fled to Canada seeking freedom. So I think that kind of goes with what I talked about, how they had to get to Canada to fully get freedom. The Ryder family operated the inn until 1902. George Randall eventually purchased the inn, expanding it and opening a speakeasy during Prohibition. So I know from that the Ryder family operated this until 1902, and then it was purchased by Randall. And then the Lutz brothers acquired the inn in 1940, and they operated it until 1979. Ryder's Inn continues to welcome guests today. So I know that the Lutz brothers purchased it in 1940 until 1979, and that the inn is still open today and welcoming guests.
Nice job. So, did you find this strategy helpful?
Yeah, I think it helped me to break up the reading and take the information pieces one by one and just kind of collect it and remember it as I went.
Yeah. All right, nice job. Next, we're going to do an after reading strategy, and we'll kind of organize all of our thoughts together and close the lesson up.
Okay.
All right, so today our after reading strategy is a graphic organizer. Now, we've used a graphic organizer together before, but this time we're using the 5 W's. Have you heard of the 5 W's before?
I have not.
All right, so the 5 W's are what, who, why, when, and where. So for this topic, we're going to say what happened, who was there, why did it happen, when did it happen, and where did it happen. So I'm going to fill this one out based on the slavery movement in general, and in general the Underground Railroad and all of that stuff. But then you're going to do it specifically on what we learned about today. Okay?
Okay.
So, what happened on the Underground Railroad? Well, I think that slaves wanted to be free. Slaves wanted freedom. They, with help, they got out of America and into freedom. And eventually, slavery was abolished, right? And there were no more slaves. All right, who was there? We had slaves and former slaves. We had abolitionists. We had anti-abolitionists, people who did not want to help slaves. And pretty much it. Why did it happen? Well, that's a really big question for what we're doing right now. But slaves said no more. But people were mad because they still wanted, the free labor. That's why slaves were here in the first place, to be bossed around and controlled. When did it happen? Pretty much since America started until 1865. So when was America? 1776 to... Now, slaves were actually here before 1776. I'm just saying that as the start of America. And where did it happen? happened in America. Pretty much everywhere. The North, South, the West was kind of a little bit different, but America and Canada, right? You said that earlier. Alright, so this is a good way. I know everything I know about slavery and the Underground Railroad, and now I have it all chunked out, and it serves as a good refresher and reminder of what happened. It's like a quick summary. Alright, so now I want you to fill it out for what we learned about today.
Okay. So what happened? Again, I think a similar topic. Slaves were seeking free passage, or freedom, rather, for passage to Canada. And the Rider Inn served as a stop right before Lake Erie for the slaves to help get them over to Canada. Who was there? So you have the traveling slaves. You have the owners of the Riders Inn. Why did it happen? So the Riders Inn existed because, it was a secret that they were traveling through, so they needed a place to stay where they wouldn't be caught or found. And ultimately they're traveling because they were seeking freedom. When did it happen? So I believe, if I remember from the text, that the Riders Inn opened in 1812. So it would have happened from 1812 until whenever they stopped owning it, which I can't quite remember. I think it was like 1840 maybe.
Do you need to look back at the
I
text?
think I did. Let's see here. So it opened in 1812. And then in the early 1800s, it served as a stop for stagecoaches. And then during the 1840s and 50s, the tavern's owners also provided runaway slaves to safety. It was really during the 1840s and 50s that they provided a passage for the slaves. And then where did it happen? For this story, it was mainly at the Riders Inn.
Do you remember where the Riders Inn is?
It's in Painesville, Ohio.
Nice.
So I will write that down as well. And then obviously, the slaves traveling from the south to the north into Canada.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice job. It seems like you remembered a lot with the reading strategies that we used. Now, did you like this graphic organizer?
I did, yes.
When else would you use it?
I think it's really just good when you're going through a lot of information, whether it's reading something, or maybe like something just happened and you want to like recap that. You go through and say like what just happened, there? Why did it happen? When did it happen? And where? I think just in general, any like topics or things that you need to recap information.
Nice job. Well, that's the end of our course. Thanks for learning with me.